Hello and welcome to the final episode of this season's post-viral podcast. Thanks for sticking with us. If you like the podcast, please do follow and like us as it helps more people to find it. But just a reminder, we're not medical professionals and we'd always recommend working with a qualified healthcare specialist for individualised advice. We also wanted to call out that in this episode, we talk about some serious issues like suicide. And so if you're not feeling ready for that, we completely understand. In the show notes, we've called out the precise time we discussed this in case you want to skip that section. But enjoy the show. Woo!
It's the final episode. Do-do-do-do.
Yeah.
Do-do-do-do-do.
It's finally here, everyone. Better late than never.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny.
We finally are recording.
I was thinking our first episode, there was like a gap of 6 weeks maybe between one episode and then we kept trying and not quite managing to record. And yeah, we've come full circle at the end of the series, 13 episodes later. Here we are again.
I guess it's fair since we just got back from Mexico.
Yeah, big transition.
Been a little bit of a readjusting.
Oh yeah. How have you settled into life?
It's good. The first week was really good. I was all pumped and doing all my appointments. And then I got this flu thing and I was out for a whole week, which is frustrating because it's still like something that would affect a person who doesn't have CFS for a few days. Still a week for me.
Yeah, as you say, readjustment. Yeah, our body's going to take a little bit of time. I definitely found thinking about before going away to being back, there's a difference in a positive way for me. Would you say for you too?
Yeah, for sure. I have more hours of the day to fill. More time where I'm just like, yeah, what should I be doing? Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, that's funny, isn't it? That is a positive. Feeling idle, feeling that you have more space to do stuff.
Yeah, but how are you doing overall?
Yeah, I think I got quite excited when I first got back. You know, seeing lots of people. I'd started some swimming and some cycling and a bit of strength work as well. Feeling really good and positive. And I think I got a bit carried away. So I'm struggling to work out my new baseline. Definitely stronger and can do more. I'm feeling better in general than before I went away. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's going to be a readjustment period, isn't it? Where because being so long out of my normal context, coming back into it, yeah, it's going to take a little while.
Yeah.
But interesting, actually, last episode we talked about environment, mold and things. I've always thought that part of my chronic fatigue is feeling very allergy, hay fever eyes and runny nose. And then in Mexico, didn't really have that very much at all. And then lo and behold, came back to the UK and started sneezing all over the place again. So yeah, I'm trying a few different things to purify my space and deep clean and remove the houseplants and stuff like that. Something I've learned actually just today is that allergies really are linked to mold. So that's one of the big signs, that and inflammation. So
yeah, you know, you would think of mold as something visible, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Yeah, definitely reacting to something in my environment. But something super exciting. Do you want to tell everyone about your...
I mean, it's still scary because it hasn't happened yet, but I got back and I was on Instagram and this dog came up for adoption. It came across my page. It's so funny. The whole time we were in Mexico, we had this neighbor, Chili. We talked about last episode, this adorable little dog that was the best. And all month I was like, I need a dog like this. I need a dog exactly like this. Perfect therapy dog, little white Bichon poodle kind of thing.
And hypoallergenic for your landlord as well. It's quite a specific requirement, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think he would say yes. So this dog came up who looks exactly like Chili. She's older. She's 8 or 9 years old. And she's coming from Mexico.
Wow.
I'm getting her tomorrow, which is so crazy. Insane. It's such a risk in a lot of ways. It's really putting a lot of faith in my body that I am healing and I can handle this. It's also a risk financially because I don't have very much money, putting a lot of faith in the fact that I will be able to work again in the near future. But also it feels like it'll be okay. Knock on wood.
I mean, the timing, the fact that your dog Winnie is coming from Mexico, looks like Chile, Right after our episode on support community dogs, the stars really aligning there. That's so cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of cosmic things coming together that just a lot of signs. I don't know if people believe in signs or not, but we'll see.
Ooh.
Yeah, and if I'm lucky, I
Amazing.
can use her as a therapy dog and bring to people who are housebound and bedbound. That would be just a dream to me, but we'll see.
Final episode for us. We've loved the podcast, and I didn't really anticipate the community we were going to create and be part of as part of this. Really, really appreciated that and loved getting to know people through the Instagram and people commenting on the podcast. But it does take up quite a lot of time, the podcast, producing it and the ideas and Instagram and everything, which is great. I think we'll talk about that later in this episode, actually. But if I am hoping to go back into work, and equally for you, Lindsay, I suppose looking for pet sitting gigs and some other stuff too, we're hoping that that will take up a bit more of our time. So we might have a bit less capacity for the podcast.
Yeah. It's been good for my brain for sure, but I can see how it's something you need to take a break from. Yeah, we'll talk more about a second season though, because we have ideas, but who knows? It's up in the air.
Yeah, I do feel like we've covered the key topics, at least I wanted to, throughout the series. Believe it or not, everyone, we had a plan going into this. So I feel like we've covered the key parts of healing that at least I've explored, core components. But yeah, definitely have some ideas for future episodes. So watch this space.
Yeah, if you are on Instagram, watch our Instagram, because I'd like to give updates and all that too. I'd also just, retroactively like to get the word out more about our podcast from the response of our lovely fans. I think there's a lot more people out there that it could help or just support. So if anyone knows ways of sharing it, please feel free.
Definitely.
All right. So shall we get into it?
Yeah, let's do it. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about the lowest of lows to the highest of highs, as I would describe it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
We're going from how bad it can get, but how resilient we are, talking about setbacks and really what it means to be resilient, a part of this journey, to the opposite end of the spectrum, which would be living your passion, which to me, I would say is like the ultimate goal.
That's a brilliant intro. Nice.
Is that a good way of saying it? I don't know.
Yeah, that's great. And how the two link. For me, I feel like living your passion or focusing on your passions is a big part of resilience and how to come through setbacks too. I love that. Highest of highs and lowest of lows, though. Is that your definition for resilience?
No, that's not my definition. I was just thinking of it as kind of summarizing the episode, but let's start with a definition of resilience since we're going to talk about it. So I'm curious of your definition.
So I would say adapting to adversity, that spoke to me as what resilience is. So in the face of adversity, adapting, or advancing despite adversity. I quite like that as well. So in the face of adversity, keeping going, really. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, that kind of captures it. I guess, as you said, even in the face of repeated adversities, as most of us had with this illness, and situations that are seemingly hopeless, one can seek to change their life for the better. So if you give up on the idea of being able to make changes, I would say maybe that's not being resilient. But the fact that anyone out there is listening to this podcast, honestly, you're a resilient person. I'm positive of that. And you have already done amazing things to show you have been through a lot and will continue to push to make your life as good as it can be.
No, I completely agree. If you are listening, you clearly have a curious mindset. Resilience in this context, I think, is believing I can heal or believing I can get better despite, as you say, repeated adversity, setback after setback, crash after crash, but still that belief, that hope, for me, what I would take resilience to be within the context of chronic fatigue.
Yeah, because with other illnesses too, I think you can be resilient even if you're not going to get better from your illness, you can still make your life better. You can still find ways to persevere.
And do you want to share, so we're not diving into an animal fact today, but do you want to share, I suppose, where this whole podcast idea came from around the spider and how that epitomizes resilience for you?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not going to give you facts, which some of you might be very happy about if you hate spiders. So where it came from was that I was on a very light yoga meditation retreat when I was in Thailand. And on the last day, they spread out these tarot cards around on the ground everywhere. And everyone was supposed to kind of feel which one felt right for them and pick it up. And that was their card. And also, I'll just give you context of what was going on at this time is that I had done DNRS, the brain retraining, and I had just gone from 1,000 steps to 8,000, killing it. And I was feeling so good, starting to plan my life again. And I get this card, and it's like a spider and a spider web. And on the back, it says, your struggles are not over. Your web will be torn down again. But each time it's torn down, you'll rebuild it in a smarter place. You'll rebuild it stronger and stronger each time. And everything about it was like, be okay with living your life small right now. And in my mind, I was like, no, pushing back. I was like, no, I'm healing. I'm almost there. And then I get back from Thailand, and within a few weeks, crashed back to zero, out of breath, going to the bathroom. Couldn't get farther than that for weeks. So depressing, but it was so crazy that card was right. But it just kind of inspired the podcast, really. I loved that metaphor of the spider and their resilience, rebuilding their webs in smarter and locations and stronger each time it gets torn down. And that's what we're doing.
No, that's beautiful. The eagle-eyed of listeners will notice that within our post-viral artwork, there is a little spider web in there. So yeah, I think it's a great metaphor for resilience in general and for the hardship that we all go through with fatigue. We haven't got a listener question today, but actually I feel like this is probably the topic that I'm asked about, and that in my discussions with other people with fatigue or ME comes up a lot of the time, or it's people in this circumstance of they made a lot of progress and they now feel like they're within a setback.
Yeah, absolutely. And people wondering how to get back on track and how to get through it. But yeah, let's start with you though. How about you want to talk about your greatest setbacks and what you thought got you through it?
Mine's an interesting one that I don't really think, if I look at the progression of my illness, it's kind of gone down, 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 and then up, 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 up. So yeah. I haven't gone through any of the dramatic progress, then crash that I think you're going to talk about. But I had a weird period where I felt like I took personal responsibility, stopped working, came to terms with my illness. But then for 9 months after that, seemed to really struggle to find my baseline activity without feeling worse. And I actually went through a period of doing less and less and less until I wasn't housebound because I could go out and about, but actually my average day, it was pretty much housebound.
Yeah.
I suppose reflecting on what helped me during that time, because it was during the winter months, was feeling very isolated, was during lockdown times as well. There were 3 things that came to mind. I think one of them is holding on to hope. So having things to look forward to, as small as they may be, if it's events, if it's family celebration, birthday, holiday, just good weather, because some of these things might strike a bit of anxiety within you. So things that you are actually genuinely looking forward to. And also believing I will heal, believing in recovery. So that could be watching other recovery stories, getting inspired, mantras or affirmations, or surrounding yourself with things that do inspire, that I will feel better, this isn't forever, I'm going to get there. I think that holding on to hope was really important for me.
Yeah, it's so hard to hold on to that, hey? You go through so many times where you're like, am I going to get better? Is this it?
Yeah, and I think that's part of it, isn't it? And knowing that, giving yourself a break on days like that where you're like, whatever, today's a write-off. Just being kind to yourself in that situation, I think.
Yeah. It's so quick our mind can go back to those terrible places, how hard it is to hold on to hope consistently.
And I think that's where a lot of the other things we talked about in the series, they might help, but it's balancing it with sometimes life is rubbish. Don't force yourself too much.
Yeah.
But then the next thing that did help is focusing on what I could do within that. So I tried to start stretching. That was too much. And so then I was literally doing 10 seconds worth of stretching, building up a second a week, breathwork programs or meditation programs, or I was reading a book, The Artist's Way, which I'll talk about later. But I found that so helpful to have things that you could focus on that you can do. Yeah, that definitely helped me. And then the last one, just filling my day with little bits of joy. So baths, it was trying to get into some sort of nature, football matches, because I like football, audiobooks, candles, treats, whatever it is, trying to inject some joy, taking care of yourself and being kind to yourself in that situation.
And compassion. I think it's all about giving yourself compassion.
Yeah. If you think about someone else in that situation, how kind you'd be to them.
Yeah.
Just because it's every day for a long period doesn't negate the fact that you're still suffering. Since then, my crashes, I tend to call them flares actually, because I do think language is important. They have been like more short-lived, fortnight at most. And yeah, your mind does spiral sometimes during that, but trying to do those three things, be kind to myself, go slow in that period too.
No, yeah, I think it's a good thing to show both of our cases, because it does seem like people are kind of one or the other. Either they have generally an upward trend overall, like you, or it's like me, where they're up, down, up, down, up, down, but the highs get higher and the lowers get lower.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Would you say that your crashes each time have been harder?
Yeah, I would say they are mentally harder. Once you've got yourself out of that rut, and I did start to make progress again, and I'd get back up, up, up. And then brain retraining wise, you want to convince yourself that, you're going to get better. You're going to get better. So then when you do crash again, it's just the most depressing thing. And it's interesting because I listened to Heal with Liz was talking to the Chronic Comeback guy on his podcast after I messaged her, and I was like, I'm just still curious how you've managed to totally release that fear of it happening again, because I still carry that fear. And it might be that releasing that fear could help me, but I think it also protects me a little bit because it could happen again. It's really like a form of PTSD. So we really, really need to grieve for our own situations. I'll talk a little bit more about the last big crash I had, because that's what I would call my rock bottom, where I feel like I finally was able to convince myself that it was time to make drastic changes.
The launch pad, as Liz would say in that interview.
Yeah, I really like that analogy of when you hit your rock bottom, it can be the point for the biggest bounce back. Go down and then you can go up, 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 because I know how bad it can get. And just to talk about that a little bit, suicide warning right here. I was at a place, I would say, after that last crash where I was alone on this island. The weather was terrible. This is like October 2020. Bam, another huge crash. And I had some kind of sinus infection that just would not go away. And it was in my lungs. And I would say that was the first time where I got to the point of, is it the pills or the cliffs? Which one am I going to go for? Is this worth living? And it's so sad to say that.
But yeah, it is sadly, because it's so isolating as well. I think in a way it's comforting to hear you say that probably a lot of us, even if it's just a flash in our minds, completely get where you were at.
Yeah, for me, it was about a 2-day period where I was just crying constantly. I was just so done for. So I kind of wrote out how I got out of that, and maybe this will help people.
Yeah, go for it.
I do think that one thing that can help in these situations is spirituality, because we haven't talked about spirituality very much on the podcast, but I've talked about my dreams giving me messages and looking for signs from the universe. having some kind of faith that there's something, whatever it is, that there's something out there, there's some kind of higher thing going on. What happened was I dragged myself outside onto like these beautiful cliffs over the ocean and just was screaming because there's nobody around, screaming at the universe, like, what do you want me to do? What do I do? I was literally like asking God for help. Somebody help me. And I know it sounds crazy, but there was a gust of wind just like came over me. And that felt like a little sign of something, of somebody listening.
Yeah.
I guess I would say that first, just letting it out is the anger. I think it's really good to let that anger out of what is happening to you. This isn't fair. We shouldn't be in this situation over and over and over again when we're trying our best. The suicide rates are really high for this illness because it is just so hard. And we really understand everyone out there having a really hard time. It's valid. Your experiences are valid. This is hard. And you got to let out that anger. You got to cry it out because just that lifts a little bit off your shoulders.
Yeah.
And so with that, for me, was the spirituality of feeling like I'm not alone. Something's out there listening. One example is a dream I had the night before I had the car accident, but I had a dream and it was my grandma who's deceased and my dog I grew up with who's deceased now. And they're shrouded in this like gold light and it's felt happy. And I said to them, is this heaven? And I could just feel them smiling and loving me and then pushing me back and saying, it's not your time yet. It's not your time yet. And then I was in the car and I was thrown 15 meters out of the spinning car. The moment before we were hit, I was telling my mom about that dream. That's my last memory before we were hit, is telling her about that dream. And the fact that I landed on a grassy spot, that's the only reason I'm still here today. If I had landed on the road, if I had hit the trees, there's a little bit of grass I landed on. It's just crazy.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It is really incredible. So I'm not going to convince anyone, but spiritual's really been something has won out for me during this illness, and it's helped me a lot. I would say that.
No, I can see moments of serendipity that you were talking about there. So when you were on the cliff edge and the gust of wind came, I've definitely had moments where, probably not as poignant as that, but where you do think, oh, wow, that felt almost magical or meant to be in that moment. And it gives a bit of hope and a bit of meaning to the suffering too.
Yeah, I know a lot of people with chronic illnesses like become more spiritual, and it makes sense. It intertwines with the glass half full, you will recover mentality because it's putting your faith in something. But yeah, that was followed up by 2 days of just me like crying horribly and literally listing things I was grateful for hours and hours a day just to keep myself afloat because I was in so much pain. And gratitude, as cheesy as it can be, you really can forget all the good things in your life so easily, especially in those situations. It wasn't long after that my friend came to visit me. I asked her to come, and that's the next step that I think is extremely important, is to talk to someone. If you're just ruminating in your head over and over and over again, nothing good comes of that. Talk to someone about how you're feeling. I had never talked to anyone about having those feelings of cliffs or pills before. And it probably shocked my friend a little bit, but she was glad I talked to her about it. And it made me feel a lot better. It lifted a lot of weight off my shoulder. So we'll put some numbers up, the suicide hotlines. If you're ever considering it, it just helps so much to talk to someone. Maria Bamford, who's my favorite stand-up comedian, talks about having been suicidal, and she said she would just call like Pizza Hut or something, and they're not going to hang up on you, and just tell them what you're going through, because sometimes you can get through to them faster. Just like anyone, talk to someone if you're feeling that way.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice, actually.
Yeah. And then the next thing, once I felt out of that deepest of deep, was to make a plan. Having some kind of plan to get out of this is what I needed. And my friends really helped me make a plan. Lindsay, we're getting you off that island and we're getting you to somewhere where you can be supported and we can get food to you whenever you need it. So having a plan to change your situation in some way for the better, even though it can feel like I can't change anything right now. Once you talk to people, you'll find that there's ways they can help you.
I really like that. It makes me think too of you're allowed to be unmotivated, but don't stay unmotivated. So something that I often do is if I'm in a bit of a flare up, then I'm like, well, I'm going to give myself till, let's say, the end of the weekend, because that's a milestone coming up and I can be able to eat whatever I want. I'm just going to treat myself, be really kind to myself. But then come Monday, I'm going to get back on my plan, as you say. So it could be nutrition, it could be that light stretching, it could be programs or watching videos or audiobooks, whatever it is. That's when I'm going to get remotivated and get back on it, on my plan again.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that everyone needs to hit their lowest crazy rock bottom like that to heal. You know, things just have to be drilled in a certain amount of time before we can really start to live it. But without that lowest of low, I don't know if I could have done the 3-month Candida diet, which made a huge difference. That taught me that I could do these things. I hope that's helpful to someone. So now that we've told you how we got out of our biggest setbacks, we're going to give you some ideas for setbacks in general in the 3 areas that we've covered in the last 3 episodes. The first area would be emotional awareness. And then the second one we'll talk about a little bit is brain retraining. And then the third about knowing your values could help.
Yeah, I mean, emotional awareness. One thing I really like is when I am in a flare up is not placing expectations on myself. If I feel like a burdening emotion in me, journaling that out, or I really like what you were saying about going somewhere and just screaming it out, or if you can, dancing it out, just getting that visceral emotion out of you in some way, or complaining to someone that will just take it and listen. Maybe a therapist is the best person for that.
Yeah.
But emotional freedom technique, we haven't talked about that before.
Right, yeah.
That was suggested to me by a GP actually who recovered from chronic fatigue, having had it for 10 years. You may know it as tapping. We have these meridian points in our body, acupressure points around the head, shoulders, and just under the arms, where if you tap them, scientifically, it's proven to have a calming, relaxing effect on your body. And the idea of emotional freedom technique is that you engage with the emotions that you are feeling while tapping these calming parts of your body. So you're not denying brain retraining. I'm fine. I'm going to go and do this anyway. You're actually engaging with, even though I feel all this pain, even though I feel this fatigue, this sadness, even though I think this is never going to change, I remind myself all things do change. I love myself. I accept myself. I cherish myself anyway. Brad Yates on YouTube. Sharon Smith has a really good one for chronic fatigue, actually. And Nick Ortner, he has a tapping app with lots of different free tapping things you can do. 6-9 months, I was doing this every day, particularly when I was at my lowest.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Yeah, I found that there's something about laying hands on your body while you engage with how you're feeling and the sensations in your body. Like meditation's great, but I do really like tapping or like touching. Actually, I don't want to say touching myself.
Say it.
And you score your discomfort at the beginning, and then once you've been through the tapping process at the end, even if nothing changed, I would feel like something shifted and I felt a bit better for having done that. And I still do it now a lot, actually, if I'm driving somewhere or in the train somewhere, going to something I'm a bit nervous about, or I've got quite prominent symptoms, tapping through that I find really helpful for engaging with your body and the emotions and physical sensations.
Yeah, I've done it on and off, but not consistently for periods of time. But it definitely seems to help people a lot. And we can definitely post a video of someone showing you how to do it. Yeah, I think it feels nice. And it feels like kind of like you're tapping on your body and these parts being like, hello.
Oh, yeah.
To kind of connect with your body. Be like, wake up.
live our lives so much in our heads that, yeah, just to kind of
put yourself back in your body, I think is really important because, yeah, like you just said, we're in our heads a lot.
So I was going to mention the Perrin technique. It's very similar to
yeah.
emotional freedom technique. By laying hands on myself with this massage technique, lymphatic drainage, Perrin technique of massage, I almost feel like I'm reinforcing to my brain, like I'm helping myself heal, I'm calming my nervous system. Because what the Perrin technique is all about is that our lymphatic system has either got toxins in it or it's not working particularly well. And so this massage that you can do, self-massage at home, Dr. Perrin suggests like 4 times a day is ideal. And he does also suggest working with a osteopath practitioner too. But you can do the self-massage. You're stimulating the lymphatic system and getting the toxins moving and being pushed down to your liver and being eliminated. So I find, because visualization might be a bit too much for me on a day where I've got severe brain fog, but I can still massage myself.
Yeah, I do it every day too. It feels really nice to do. And yeah, I think it does help you feel like you're actually doing something. Like he said, just physically rubbing your body, and it's connecting with your body as well.
Yeah, I should say, because I get asked about the Perrin technique. I've been going to an osteopath for about a year. Lovely lady. I really like her. It definitely coincided with me making a bit of a step forward in my recovery. For complete honesty, did some like gut stuff too. So it's quite hard to point the finger at which made me feel better. But this past year, or 2021, I have improved slowly while going to see an osteopath for it and doing the self-massage. And I mean, like all these things, sadly, it does come with a cost. And they do also say, because you're getting the toxins moving, you can feel worse to begin with when you start going with it, which isn't necessarily a bad sign, but it's just to be aware of for the first 4 to 6 weeks, and then you'll start to feel better.
Yeah, I definitely felt a little worse after the first few times, but I've only done it on my own, what we'll share, the video, and I find that helpful. But yeah, I guess there's more you can do with an osteopath too. Like you just said, we're in our heads a lot, and really being like, where am I feeling it in my body? What could this mean? Somatic training, getting more into that side of it. I've been really into that lately.
So where do I feel it? I still really struggle with that, because it sounded like you used to be a bit like that, but you now really love the somatic work. So
yeah,
what's shifted?
Yeah, this is pretty new for me. So I think a lot of it is time and continuing to try. And like, the more you're aware of your body, the more you start to realize where in your body you're feeling things. I don't know if there's a way I can say, just do this. Easier for some people than others. Like, can you feel your heartbeat without pressing on your pulse? I can, but it can take practice, right? But that's somewhere you could start.
Okay.
Being aware when you're hungry, being aware when you're full. Those are kind of the easiest ways, but it is starting to connect more with your body.
Okay.
And I changed my acronym. Remember, I gave that CFS acronym, something I like to do every day: be creative, fun, somatic. I was thinking about it. If you're in a setback, I think actually it should be cozy, fun, somatic, because your priorities on these bad days, which goes along with your body awareness, is feeling cozy. Do I feel cozy? Whatever it means to you. Fun, I still think, can be had when you're in the worst of days, whether it's looking at dog pictures on Instagram or listening to a comedy podcast. Message me and I'll give you recommendations. I love comedy podcasts. And then somatic, which, as I said, takes practice, can start with body scanning and just body awareness, and then can turn into what I've been able to connect to more lately of where do you feel it in your body? And then feeling that emotion, sometimes it kind of rises up, like if it's in your chest, up and out your mouth and gone. You can kind of release it, which is a really nice feeling.
Okay, cool.
And then the other thing I just wanted to bring attention to was our Instagram friend, Wanda Belize. She created a little crash cheat sheet. And I think that really goes with body awareness, because the things she brings up are rest, reduce stimuli, relax, listen to things you love, do something you're passionate about. That's kind of like the creative thing. But yeah, they're all things that kind of have to do with going with your body's awareness and being aware of what you need in that moment.
Yeah, it's really helpful, that. And she has electrolyte drinks, some really practical stuff in there.
Yeah, not eating too much crap, even though that's what you kind of want to. It actually makes you feel worse. There are things you can do to really make yourself feel a bit better. So the next one would be brain retraining.
I think just a brain retraining tip that may or may not be helpful is, I don't tend to talk about myself in a crash. I would just say experiencing a flare in symptoms at the moment, just because I find for me, it sounds less severe. I used to kind of say crash a lot as a way to justify to other people. I found I'm in a crash. And so people are like, oh, of course you can't come to this event or this event. But just for me, I found that actually it almost alerted and alarmed my nervous system and the reasons I was doing it with for other people as opposed to for myself. So there's no right and wrong when it comes to language, but just being mindful and aware of the kind of language you're using. I can catastrophize and be quite absolute with things. Things aren't going to change, or it's been like this for forever.
Yeah.
Is it? Or actually, and that brings me on to the next part actually, of when you do feel a little bit of motivation, trying to be a bit curious with how you're approaching your setbacks. So in the CFS Health program, they talk about Byron Katie's 4 questions that she asks of what you're telling yourself. So if I'm saying, oh, it's going to be like this forever, asking the first question, well, is it true? You might say, yes, it is true. Second question, is it 100% true? And you're like, well, actually, I can't say it's 100% true. I don't know. And then asking, who would I be without this thought? How would I feel with a different thought? And then the final question, what evidence can I find to support this alternative belief? Just almost forcing your mind to acknowledge a different version of reality and then getting creative, trying to find some evidence for that alternative reality.
Yeah.
Those questions can be quite good for journaling. You can apply it to anything. Have you ever used it, Lindsay?
For sure. I think if you catch yourself, the first step is catching yourself with brain retraining. When you start to think things, like you said, it's really useful to be like, okay, but is that really true? What's the opposite of this could be? That's really helped me in terms of Byron Katie. She's also she looks like a mystic.
Wow.
Watch a video of her. She's so interesting. She was in a really deep depression, and then all of this just came to her and snap. She was like a different person. But yeah, I just wanted to say some things similar to that. I know I catch myself. I use the word crash too much. Heal with Liz was calling it rebalancing. Like if you're in a yoga pose and you fall, it's not really falling. It's just your body rebalancing. I liked that metaphor. I have another friend that just calls it adjustment periods. I really like adjustment periods too. That makes it way less scary.
Yeah.
And then Jen Mann, who hosts CFS School, she doesn't even talk about symptoms. She just says, these are messages from my body. So it's so interesting how you can change language.
Yeah, and I mean, when we both talk about it, it sounds fickle and silly, but actually I think there is a lot of truth and the mindset behind it. So I think it's worth a try.
Yeah. And then another thing too, if you have the energy, do a visualization. I even did one yesterday where the CFS Warriors lady, Victoria, she led you in it. So you can just literally visualize what she's saying, hiking in a rainforest. And it was so nice to just follow along and imagine myself there. We'll post that one. That can really get you in a different frame of mind.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And then the last one we want to talk about is how our values can help us in these setbacks.
So yeah, do you want to kick us off, Lindsay?
Yeah. I was thinking about mine because we figured out mine were connection and compassion. And I was like, oh, that actually kind of goes really well with what I should be doing when I'm in one of these flare-ups. If connection is important, I feel better if I do talk to someone, even though that's not my natural tendency necessarily. even if it's connecting through voice notes or Facebook or Instagram with other people, not being in a bubble the way I put myself on that island.
Yeah.
And then also compassion. I don't know if you noticed when I was talking about my biggest crash, but none of that really involved giving myself compassion. I didn't really know how to do that. And I think self-compassion is one that I've had a lot of trouble with. And it really shows that actually it could be very helpful. If I have such compassion for other people, to be able to learn to do it for myself. I don't know. I just wonder if reflecting on your values can help you in these situations. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't put the two together until we thought about this episode, but thoughtfulness and contribution for me, the big values when we did Brené's exercise, I think doing this podcast has been huge for my own recovery. Now, I'm not saying that everyone should go and make a podcast. I've said before, when you focus less on recovery and less on yourself in recovery and more on living and like passions, you start to see the most progress in recovery. So having this podcast, because before we were doing it, I basically spent a year of focusing solely on recovery. So I was going to fatigue conferences, I was researching lots of things, I was reading lots of self-help books, and a lot of the stuff we talked about on this podcast actually, which has been really helpful and I think really beneficial long term, but it was very inward focused and quite insular. And so then since then, because we release an episode every 2 weeks, it comes with a bit of a structure to it of planning the episode, recording the episode, producing it, doing the Instagram post too, having something outside of myself that even when I'm feeling a bit rough and in a flare up, I've really benefited from having that something outside of myself to focus on, something I'm passionate about that contributes and that is, I'd like to think, quite thoughtful. Finding something you're passionate about and that aligns with your values that you can focus on, a really good thing if you're in a space where you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by your illness, you're not making progress, frustrated, because often our natural thing is to go to what's the new protocol or supplement, doctor I can work with, which may help, but there could also be this alternative avenue. Yeah,
it gives you more of a big picture about life. We can get so insular in our own heads and in our own little tiny world. We get preoccupied. So thinking about our deeper values and the world around us, and as we're going to talk about now, our passion, can really get us in a different frame of mind. Yeah, so let's talk about our passions.
Yeah. So when I was probably at my lowest illness-wise, a book which helped me no end was The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's just such a good book. It's a workbook. She structures it as a 12-week course, but she actually calls it a healing journey towards recovering our creative self. Because definitely me going into this book, I was like, I'm not really the creative one in my family or particularly creative. And she's immediately like, that's not true. You've told yourself you're not creative, but we are all creative. And this is a workbook that's going to help you uncover and rediscover that creativity. You can do it completely at your own pace, but it is good to have accountability with some of the exercises. It really helped me think outside the box around what my passions are and how I'm creative. It gets you to do lists of things like, what are 20 things you enjoy doing? When did you last do them? Schedule in, when's the next time you're going to do this? Who are people that you admire and why? What were things you liked about yourself as a child and things you used to do that you enjoyed that you no longer do, or things you would like to try but you're not allowed to, or you just never would? So things like, I think for me, like drumming or artwork because I wasn't the artist in the family, or kite surfing or skating because I'm too old now to get into skating or whatever. And then asking questions, it goes a bit deeper, of things like, if you were 20 and you had money, what would you do? Or if you had faith and you wouldn't fail and money, what would you do? Good for probing, what does living your full passion, your full purpose look like for you if you strip back and remove all of the limitations that we place on ourselves. I really liked that, and it really helped me at a time when I felt particularly low about myself and my circumstances. Yeah, that could be a good one to invest in if you are at that place.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Joseph Campbell quote, "The treasure you want is in the cave you are afraid to go in."
Oh, nice.
Forces you to look in that cave. This
Yeah.
is very scary for some people because a lot of us have just gone with the flow or done quote unquote what we're supposed to do. A book that I really love and a lot of people love is The Alchemist by Paolo Coehlo. The main idea in his book is that we all knew what we're supposed to do with our lives when we were little, but then we forget. I don't know if it's actually always true, but I used to always play pet store owner and when I was a little girl. And then when I got to junior high, that's when I started to really fall in love with making people laugh, my love of comedy. It's just interesting to think about when in your childhood some of your passions might have developed as well. And that's the thing about these illnesses is it can be, not for all of us, but a chance to start again. People who are super sensitive individuals like myself, living your passion is very important. I don't think it's as important to everyone to have a job that aligns with their passion, as long as they can get it somewhere in their life. But for some of us, we can't really live doing a job that isn't something we're passionate about.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about a book called Soul Change by Robyn Truby. She has a whole chapter on how to find your passion, and there's 6 different areas you can write a list of. So you start with your joys. So write down all the things that make you super joyful. The second is to write down your values. So if you did the Brene Brown one, then we have those. And then third, how can you combine your joys and your values together? Then number 4 is how do you like to interact with people while you're doing the things that bring you joy? So are you more of a person who likes to work by yourself? Do you like to work in a group? And then 5 is what would your ideal world look like? I think it goes along with your values overall. And then she said you'd create a purpose statement of how you want to live. So
oh, nice.
I mean, I don't even actually know what my job is going to be, but I know now what I have to focus on in terms of those areas of joys and values and how I like to work. So I think that's helpful for me.
Yeah. No, I completely see that, because it can be quite intimidating to think, what is my ultimate ideal passion and has to be my career and vocation.
Yeah.
But actually, you don't have to get there immediately. It's thinking about what are the things you've enjoyed or valued historically from education, school, previous jobs, doing more of that, basically.
It can also help you probably release some of the fear around it. I was listening to Gerard Carmichael's recent comedy special. I love him. He had a really, really tough childhood, but he really knew that comedy was his passion, and he knew that he wasn't going to be successful unless he was unique in some way, that it wasn't doing what other people do that was going to make him successful. He knew that he had to do what he needed to do. That's really inspirational to me, that he looks at failure as a good thing because you learn from it. So as much as we're getting that from our illness, we're trying to learn from our illness. If we look at our passions that way too, we'll try something, maybe that won't work exactly, but it'll show us a little better how to get there, instead of making it, I'm going to do this and this will work and that will be it. I think it's all about releasing the fear. And because I think with my master's, I don't actually think it was the wrong master's for me, public health necessarily, but I had no vision of where it was leading me to. And that's why I was so stressed out by it. If I had literally just had in mind my values of compassion and connection, and I wanted to be working with animals and I wanted to help people, I could have felt it was like a stepping stone and instead of this stressful thing.
I mean, it makes me think about Western education. Is it to help you find your passions? Or in the experience of a lot of people, it's you do get to that point, probably where you do your master's or further education, or you leave school and you're like, oh, actually, I've got some of these skills now. Some things I like, some things I don't, but I don't actually know where I'm supposed to take this or go with this now.
It's just really interesting how the world works. I think we're ready now for one more poem from the great Stuart Bryan.
So yeah, it's a little melancholic, but I think the topic that we're talking about today can be a bit sad. So yeah. For all the times I can't go on, when limbs are heavy and days seem long, just watching, waiting for tomorrow to come, I thank myself that I am strong. For all the times when life is tough, I wake again and still feel rough, just getting through the days enough, I remind myself that I am loved. For all those times I pushed too hard, when hope had sparked, reality flawed, I don't see progress, just what I've lost. Still gently I whisper, you are enough. For all the times I feel alone, but push away those who are close, search for comfort on my phone, I stop and breathe and calm my soul. And for all those times my mind goes there, despondent, bitter, consumed by fear, that nothing changes year on year, I water hope with these tears. For all things change as nature grows, this healing journey ebbs and flows, though words are fickle, they're weighed in truth, I believe in myself for what I've come through.
Yay! Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, I really loved it. It made me a little bit teary. Oh.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a sad topic, isn't it? But hopefully people can relate.
Yeah. Oh, the resilience of it. It is such a struggle. Everyone listening, we understand and we love you. You're more powerful than you realize, and this too shall pass. All the things that they say in the quotes you could put around your room are true.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's so twee and fickle, but a lot of these things, they are true. And we're here for you. We're all cheering each other on.
Yeah, we'll look back and smile.
Oh, well, I can't believe it. We're at the end. Oh, thanks for sticking with us if you're still there.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening. We really, really appreciate it out there and wish everybody the best of the best of the best.
Yeah, and please do share it around in different groups you're part of, and if you think it can help people, because sadly a lot of things you do have to pay for. This is a free resource which we hope is helpful.
Like and subscribe.
Right, well, yeah, we will say
adios. What a journey.
Who knows where we'll be when we speak to you all next.
Yeah, with a dog. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.